When it comes to e-commerce, there's no denying that eBay is at the forefront of most of our minds. Ranking the 14th most visited website in the UK and 22nd in the US, its combined visits are a staggering 830 million a month. That's more monthly visits than Spotify and Netflix combined. But when you scratch beneath the surface, things aren't at all what they seem. eBay have been facing negative growth for years now. Conduct a search online about eBay and you'll encounter a multitude of negative articles, with users leaving the platform in droves, sales are falling off a cliff overnight, and widespread questions about whether eBay is intentionally limiting people's sales and visibility, potentially acting as a bottleneck to their growth. Further research shows that eBay is witnessing an alarming decline in users. Since 2018, their user base has consistently dropped year on year, resulting in 46 million people leaving the platform, or 26%. And aside from the coronavirus pandemic surge, eBay's revenue has essentially been stagnant for years, both before and after the pandemic, while other companies are reaching all-time highs year on year. They've also recently disclosed a second round of layoffs within 12 months, resulting in a further 9% reduction in their workforce as of January 2024. Not only that, they're also struggling to stay relevant, as only 14% of their user base comprises of Gen Zs. But with so much traffic going through their site and their long-standing reputation, why? This is another business theory, and we're trying to figure out what's going on with eBay. So, the first and best place to look would be where eBay's revenue comes from in the first place, which is from taking a very generous slice of the pie when a seller sells an item, and then that relies entirely on a buyer finding an item that they like at a price they like and making the purchase. So if the buyers ain't buying and the sellers ain't selling, what's making them so unhappy? Well, the first thing is probably prices. The prices on eBay have steadily increased year on year, and they're creating a perception among users that the platform is just becoming less budget friendly. With the rising global cost of living as well, individuals are finding themselves with less disposable income to allocate towards this sort of stuff. Another thing that's putting off buyers on eBay is probably inconsistent delivery options. It's understandable that people have their preferences in couriers, but with each listing having a different postage option, it becomes a bit of a minefield. For example, I might be highly interested in an item, but only to discover that the seller's chosen a preferred courier based on their personal experiences with that courier, or most likely the cheapest option. But the seller's chosen courier in my area uses packages for football practice, and that would instantly put me off making a purchase.
I have a package for you.
Sounds broken.
Most likely, sir. I'll bet it was something nice, though.
Amazon offers a completely different approach to their deliveries. They either deliver it themselves or they'll outsource it to Royal Mail. If a third-party seller chooses to sell a product through Amazon, then they have a strict SLA to adhere to, meaning that it's got to either match the service that Amazon would provide or you're out, which means you'll find a lot more orders arriving by premium delivery couriers like DPD or UPS. I'm in the UK, so I'm using UK couriers as an example. There's also another issue which is very problematic for buyers, and that's products claiming to be in the UK when really they're coming from China. This system is completely flawed and there's no way to distinguish it firsthand. I know when I purchase something I get slightly annoyed when an order confirmation isn't followed by a knock at the door. So when I make a purchase and then a day later I'm greeted with some random tracking number which clearly looks like it's from China, and Amazon deliver on that promise every single time. Then there's the emotional aspect. eBay is notably a very emotion-driven marketplace. Most of the sellers aren't seasoned business owners, and instead it's mainly comprised of small startups or individuals chasing the dream of financial independence. These sellers are more often than not reselling items from charity shops, auctions or pallet returns. So consequently, when an issue arises, emotions start to come into play, and it transforms into a battle of sentiment. The buyer and seller tend to take matters personally, turning the resolution process into a competition to determine who's right, rather than focusing on finding practical solutions. And lastly, the misuse of eBay's seller protection program also discourages buyers. I encountered situations in my e-commerce days where I've sent an item out and then the buyer claims it was stolen from their property upon delivery. Surprisingly, this one pops up a lot more than people might think. All the seller needs to do is provide a tracking number with GPS confirmation of delivery, and then eBay will side with the buyer. While this policy is designed to protect its sellers, it can be disheartening if a customer is genuinely being truthful. Over 60% of items typically sold on eBay aren't easily replaceable. They're often unique purchases made for resale. And in truthful cases, it becomes a bit of a dilemma whether the seller or buyer has to bear the financial loss. In exceptional cases, eBay do sometimes intervene and absorb the loss by refunding both the buyer and the seller. However, if they were to do this for every single purchase, then they're probably going to be bankrupt very soon. So the next part, we're going to be looking at why the sellers are unhappy. The sellers are the ones that pay the fees to eBay, and they're the ones who are equally, if not more, dissatisfied with the platform. And it's not like if they do want to speak to somebody about it, they can address it, because their customer service is getting progressively worse. Over the years, it's become increasingly harder to speak to anybody at eBay. Going through their help and contact page today has become somewhat of an enigma. The button to speak or call eBay keeps getting buried deeper within their web pages, designed to address queries without any direct interaction. While it may look like a way to streamline support for buyers and sellers, there are certain things that require human intervention, and it doesn't seem like eBay cares. When you do finally manage to get through to somebody, you're heavily pushed towards this revolutionary new help and contact page, or end up having pointless conversation with an overseas agent. These agents have clearly only ever received basic customer service training, so will only view your queries at surface level. Anything more than that, then it leads to them misunderstanding you completely, and then they'll offer you a surface level solution. Their defect appeals process has also become almost entirely automated. Gone are the days where you used to hash out your problems with an agent who listened to your concerns and made decisions based on both sides of the story. Now it all goes to what they call a back office team. This essentially means that the sellers will invest a significant amount of time writing and conducting the legwork for investigative work when submitting an appeal to the somebody, if it's not AI, who assesses the appeals at face value and swiftly makes decisions, often within minutes, stripping away any context and meaning, leaving sellers being stuck with defects on their account that originated from situations beyond their control. This creates a detrimental cycle as the defects contribute to poor seller performance, subsequently slowing down sales. And these sellers on eBay aren't just individuals selling items for a bit of extra money anymore. Many have made a significant life-altering investments into their eBay businesses, relying on the income to support their families, and for some, selling on eBay is a serious effort to create a full-time job, and these sellers feel like their concerns just aren't being listened to or addressed properly. But why would eBay lean towards automation? Well, the primary aim is to trim employee overheads and boost profits for its investors. Because right now, investors have little confidence in the future of eBay. Its PE ratio is sitting around 8, which means that they expect to pay $8 for every $1 of the company's earnings. The higher the PE ratio is, the more money investors are expected to make. And in a recent announcement, eBay have revealed plans to shrink its workforce by another 1,000 employees, which makes up about 9% of its workforce. This marks the second round of reductions in the past 12 months, with a previous layoff of 500 employees, another 4% back in February of 2023. Then, there's the fees. For individual sellers, there's a fixed fee hovering at around 12.8%, and that's a rate that's remained relatively consistent for years. But for business sellers, fees have incrementally risen year on year to a point where, for low margin sellers, eBay makes more money per transaction than the seller does. And that doesn't include eBay's push for upsells, such as promoted listings advanced, Google Shopping, subtitles, shop subscriptions, insertion fees, and so on. The split going to eBay can in extreme cases be around 30 to 40% of the selling costs, and that's 30 to 40% of the turnover, not profit. But what they don't seem to pay attention to is the fact that these costs are only going to be pushed onto the buyer, because the seller cannot continue to swallow these costs if it's not making any money. Most sellers on eBay can't take advantage of economies of scale like Amazon can to drive down purchasing costs. And as a result, sellers are recognising that they can potentially earn more by selling the same products on other platforms for lower fees. For example, Etsy's fees are only 6.5%. That's nearly half of what eBay charge. So it is possible. Then there's the issue of buyers taking advantage of the buyer-orientated systems, such as the money-back guarantee. As a seller, your profitability heavily relies on the honesty of the buyer. Some items just aren't cost effective enough to send with tracking, so sellers will often opt for a cheaper untracked service to stay competitive, but this creates a significant loophole for exploitation. Sellers find their hands tied in disputes on eBay. Unless they provide a tracking number with GPS confirmation or a photograph, they're likely to lose the case, and eBay will side with the buyer without any chance of appeal. And some buyers have become wise to this, leading to a large number of customers pretending that the item's not arrived. But this just creates another problem, because when a seller sees enough of these cases, which they will, they'll start to develop a skeptical mindset, which then creates a false economy, where sellers are conditioned by previous experiences, will just assume that a truthful buyer is just another attempt at exploitation and respond defensively. So then the buyer's legitimate claim gets clouded by all the previous dishonest claims, which starts all discussions off with high tensions, which puts off truthful buyers from buying on eBay because they don't like being treated unprofessionally, which leads us to our next part, eBay's competition. For the first 15 to 20 years after eBay's establishment in 1995, their main competitor was essentially confined to Amazon. However, as the internet grew and the prevalence of smartphones and global rise of social media, other companies began innovating and claiming significant share of what eBay could do, but was primarily due to lack of competition. These companies started developing marketplaces tailored to specific niches, a direction that eBay didn't fully embrace, resulting in a substantial loss of market share for eBay. Now, eBay contends with a diverse array of competitors, each with its unique strengths. There's Etsy, standing at 2.5 billion revenue as of 2023, who captured the creator economy and stands out with lower fees, personalised items and are focused on vintage products. Amazon, renowned for its faster delivery and top-notch customer service. Gumtree, which was originally acquired by eBay in an attempt to monopolise the market, but Gumtree faced challenges from emerging platforms like Facebook Marketplace. And in July 2020, eBay sold Gumtree to Adevinta ASA in a deal worth over $9 billion. Then there's Facebook Marketplace, which turned over $26 billion in revenue back in 2021. It's also integrated into Facebook, and it offers free listings and cash on collection options, and its close association to Facebook makes selling something that's a bolt-on very unlikely. Then there's all the other platforms such as Craigslist, worth around 660 million, Vinted 371 million, Spock 130 million, Depop 552 million. Then there's various e-commerce platforms, and then Google Shopping, which all play a role in taking away market share from eBay. And the numbers are backing it up as well. Back in 2007, eBay accounted for just under 37% of all e-commerce sales online. Fast forward to today, and that number's significantly dropped to just 3%. Compare that to Amazon, who, as of today, are still sat at 37%. There is literally so many other ways to shop online, it seems like people are steering away solely from using eBay and Amazon, and doing their shopping elsewhere, which asks the question, who still uses eBay? Well, 61% of current users are said to be between 35 and 64 years old. This suggests that Gen Z don't find eBay as appealing or adaptable to their preferences. On the other hand, millennials and preceding generations, who were at the forefront of technology during eBay's revolutionary era, conveniently fall within this age bracket. This suggests to me that eBay is essentially just thriving on its legacy, primarily used by the older generation due to a perceived difficulty in adapting to contemporary trends. The older demographic, often resistant to change and preferring simplicity, seems to stick with eBay as it aligns with their familiar ways, creating a generational divide in the platform's user base. One theory that seems to back this up is that many of my customers when I sold on eBay had a Blue Yonder email address. And to provide you with a little bit of context, Blue Yonder emerged in 2000 as a rebrand of Telewest's cable internet, delivering ultra-fast 10MB download speeds and dial-up packages. Then, following a merger back in 2006 with NTL and Virgin Mobile, it transformed into Virgin Media, rendering the creation of Blue Yonder email addresses impossible from 2006. At the moment, eBay seemed to be leveraging on its legacy and popularity by attempting to recapture markets where other platforms have proven to be way more successful. Then they attempted to discourage customers from launching their own e-commerce stores by introducing certified refurbishment programs. This was an attempt to provide companies in the e-waste space an opportunity to leverage eBay's popularity. This was the main focus back in 2022 at eBay's networking event called the eBay Open. But unfortunately, this also doesn't like it's taken off. In pursuit of this, they're risking dropping the pie while reaching for the apple, which basically means they're neglecting the core element that has defined eBay from the beginning, its online auctions. eBay's appealing online auctions have been unmatched for nearly 30 years. Whether you're in search of a collectible, a piece of nostalgia, a second-hand car part, or vintage products, or really anything that just isn't available on the high street anymore, eBay is pretty much the first place people go to find this sort of stuff. If they focus more on marketing this, then it's a win-win for buyers and sellers. The seller wins because in these cases the 12.8% fee feels a lot more reasonable. After all, the products held no initial purchase value in the first place and were primarily sold to free up space or declutter the house. And then the buyer wins because they're getting an item at a price they feel comfortable paying for it. If a buyer places a bid for something, then they've made that financial decision that that's worth that to them. If eBay really want businesses to start selling through eBay, then they need to consider their fee structure. They need to start offering more competitive fees for business sellers. Because in theory, businesses do contribute to eBay's revenue a lot more than private sellers do, but with the way the current fees are set at, eBay are taking 300% more from them than private sellers, which is just a bit ridiculous. A fair and equitable fee system for business sellers will not only promote entrepreneurship on the platform, but it also acknowledges the substantial contribution these sellers make in the overall financial health for eBay.